Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. We're going to be talking about the stages of spiritual awakening. You guys sent in some really fascinating material, a guide that basically lays out like a 5-stage path to this whole like awakening thing.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is it's not like presented as this rigid ladder,
Yeah.
It's more like a map to help you kind of figure out where you are, on your own path
Mm.
and what might be ahead.
Yeah, totally. And it even talks about like the neurological stuff, like
Yeah.
what's actually happening in your brain in each of these stages. So cool.
It is really cool.
All right, so let's jump right in. Stage 1, trapped in the matrix.
Thank you.
And this all starts with like a pretty relatable feeling, I think, for a lot of people, like that feeling of being stuck on a hamster wheel, always chasing something.
Yeah, the source goes into this really deeply. It's basically describing this stage as like being totally dominated by the ego, that part of us that's fixated on external validation, chasing material possessions, achievements, always needing approval and significance like outside of ourselves.
Right.
And they actually use the word matrix to describe this whole system of beliefs and societal structures that kind of keep us locked in this, in this chase. Like we're programmed to believe that happiness comes from acquiring more and achieving more and being more.
So this is not even just about like individual desires. It's like the whole system is kind of feeding into this.
Exactly. It's like the matrix itself thrives on keeping us in this state of wanting, right?
Right.
Because that pursuit never truly satisfies us, it creates this constant sense of lack, always striving for something that's just out of reach.
Okay. So some people might argue that external achievements, DO, bring happiness, right? How does the source address that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And the source actually acknowledges that, external achievements can bring like temporary pleasure, but it argues that true lasting happiness, the kind that comes from like true awakening, can't be found in those things. It has to come from shifting our focus inward, recognizing the wholeness that already exists inside of us.
So then where do we even begin to like break free from this matrix?
Well, it starts with awareness. The source emphasizes things like mindfulness and connecting with nature as ways to kind of break free from the ego's grip. It's about, noticing those thought patterns that keep us stuck in that loop of chasing and craving, and then starting to question the stories we've been told about what will make us happy.
It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot, right?
Yeah,
And actually like choosing a different direction.
exactly. And that brings us to stage 2. The seeker emerges. And this is where you start to sense that there's got to be more to life than this endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. So you begin questioning those material goals and feel a pull towards something deeper, something with more purpose.
So it's kind of like you're waking up to the fact that maybe the matrix isn't all there is.
Right. But here's the caution. The source warns that simply like seeking spiritual experiences without genuine self-work can actually become a trap too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like someone going from guru to guru,
Yep.
Collecting beliefs like souvenirs, but not actually doing the work, the inner work required for transformation.
Well, that's interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. What the source is really emphasizing is it's not about just acquiring knowledge or having these like profound mystical experiences. It's about the deeper work of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Examining your beliefs and your patterns and cultivating the qualities that connect you with your true nature.
So it's not about like checking off a list of spiritual accomplishments. It's about embodying it.
Exactly. And that embodiment takes consistent practice and a willingness to really look within. It's about choosing a path that resonates with you, like mindfulness or Zen, whatever speaks to you,
Right.
and then committing to the work that that path requires.
Okay, so let's move on to stage 3. This is awakening glimpses, and this is where it starts to get really interesting. The source describes these moments as like this sudden flood of luminosity, a feeling of coming home.
I know, right?
I mean, who wouldn't want a little taste of that?
Sounds amazing. And what's fascinating is that the source actually connects these experiences to specific brainwave patterns. Yeah, it's like when your brainwaves shift into a pattern that's similar to what's observed in deep meditation.
Interesting.
Like literally your brain is rewiring itself to perceive reality in a whole new way.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that like sense of coming home during meditation?
There have been moments where I've felt a really deep sense of peace and interconnectedness,
Yeah.
and I think that's what the source is pointing to, is like these glimpses of a deeper reality that become available when we quiet the mind and we tune into our true self.
But these glimpses aren't a permanent state yet, right?
Right. At least not in this stage. The Source describes it as a taste, like a taste of the interconnectedness that underlies everything. A momentary experience of this thing called non-duality.
Okay.
And that term might sound kind of, out there, but it essentially means recognizing the inherent unity of all things. It's like you're seeing beyond the illusion of separation between ourselves and the world, between subject and object.
So it's like for a brief moment, the veil is lifted and you see how everything is connected.
Exactly. And the challenge of this stage, according to the Source, is integrating that realization into your daily life. It's one thing to have these fleeting moments of unity, but quite another to actually live from that place consistently. That's where the real work begins.
You've had these glimpses of oneness, but then, reality sets back in. The Source calls stage 4 riding the waves, which sounds a little bit like a roller coaster to me.
It can definitely feel that way. The stage is all about cycling between clarity and confusion, between the pull of the ego and the pull towards liberation. It's like you've tasted the freedom of awakening, but then the old habits and patterns, the ego stuff keeps coming back.
So the Source highlights a particularly tricky part of stage 4 is this need for detachment. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It's about learning to ride the waves of experience without getting swept away by them. You might have moments of profound insight and clarity, and then they're followed by periods of doubt and frustration, maybe even despair. The key is not to get attached to those states, not to identify with them as who you are. It's about recognizing that they're all just passing phenomena. They're like waves on the ocean.
So it's about cultivating a sense of inner balance.
Yep.
Even amidst all the ups and downs.
Exactly. And the Source gives us some really practical advice for navigating this turbulent stage. It stresses the importance of consistent practice, whether it's meditation, self-inquiry, anything that works for you. It's about, showing up, doing the work, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Even when you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. This is where perseverance is key.
It's like anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
Right? It requires effort, dedication.
Absolutely. And the Source suggests that this stage is like a crucial test. It's a refining fire that prepares you for the final stage of awakening. Which brings us to the peak of the mountain, stage 5, embodied oneness.
Okay, we've reached the summit. So what does full enlightenment actually look like according to the Source?
Well, they paint a really beautiful picture of this state where the ego has completely dissolved into wholeness. There's no longer a sense of separation between you and others, between the sacred and the mundane. It's a state of embodied unity, like living from a place of interconnectedness, where every action flows from this deep sense of inner peace and alignment with your true nature.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of abstract. Are there any concrete examples of what this might look like in a person's life?
Well, the Source makes it clear that even at this stage, you're still human, You still experience emotions, you still have, unique talents and passions, you still engage in the world. It's just from a totally different perspective.
So it's not like becoming this emotionless being, floating on a cloud or something?
Not at all. It's more about embodying your true nature. That includes joy, gratitude, a natural inclination towards service. The Source actually even points out that individuals at this stage still have humor and creativity. They're fully engaged in the world, but their actions flow from a place of deep peace and connection.
So we've journeyed from feeling trapped to experiencing this embodied oneness. That's quite a transformation. But is there anything else we should keep in mind about these stages?
Yeah, it's super important to remember that this isn't like a linear progression.
Okay.
It's more like a spiral. You might revisit certain themes or stages multiple times on your journey.
It's not like checking boxes off a list.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process. And sometimes you might find yourself facing similar challenges at different points, but each time you encounter them, you'll have a deeper understanding, a greater capacity to navigate them.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. But I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our exploration.
It is.
We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to unpack.
Absolutely. I think this is a perfect place to just pause for a moment and kind of reflect on what's resonated with us so far, what stands out, what questions does this bring up for you. We're going to dive into some of those questions and we'll explore some additional resources when we come back.
Sounds great.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive. I'm curious, did anything in particular resonate with you from our discussion of those first few stages?
I think what really struck me was the idea that awakening isn't about escaping reality. It's about seeing it more clearly, like recognizing that interconnectedness you were talking about.
I see.
And it's so fascinating that this shift in perception, like it can actually be observed in brainwave patterns.
It is fascinating. It kind of suggests that these ancient spiritual teachings are being, validated by modern science now, which just adds another layer to it. But as cool as those glimpses are, the source makes it clear that the real work lies in integrating those insights into our everyday lives, right?
Right.
And that brings up some interesting questions like, what does a life lived from that place of embodied oneness? What does that actually look like? How does that translate into action?
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious about. Like if someone is operating from that place of interconnectedness,
Yeah.
does it actually change how they interact with the world, how they treat other people?
That's a great question. And the source actually addresses that pretty directly. It suggests that at the highest stages of awakening, there's this natural inclination towards service.
Okay.
And it's not about becoming some, self-righteous savior. It's just about expressing the love and wisdom that kind of arises from that state of being.
So it's not about like preaching to others or trying to convert them to your belief.
No, not at all. It goes back to that interconnectedness. If you truly see yourself as a part of this greater whole, harming others is like harming yourself, right?
Right.
So your actions just naturally flow from this place of compassion and understanding.
Okay, let's get practical for a sec. Let's say someone's listening to this, they're like, all right, I'm intrigued, but where do I even start? What would you say to them? Like, what's step one?
Well, the source emphasizes that the journey begins with self-awareness.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to your thoughts, your emotions, your, patterns of behavior, noticing how often you're operating from that place of ego, that need for control, that fear of not being enough.
So before you can even think about reaching that state of embodied oneness, you've got to do some serious groundwork.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing is, this groundwork, this inner work, it's beneficial no matter where you are on your path, right? Cultivating mindfulness, self-compassion, questioning those limiting beliefs, these practices can benefit anyone's life, whether they're seeking enlightenment or just wanting to feel more peaceful and more fulfilled.
I love that. So it's like everyone can benefit from this. It's not just for people on some hardcore spiritual quest.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that still wonders, is this all just a bit too ideal? I mean, we live in a world full of conflict, suffering, injustice. Can these individual awakenings actually make a difference on a larger scale?
That's a huge question, and I think it's one that a lot of people grapple with. And the source does acknowledge the challenges we face in the world, but it also suggests that individual awakening is not separate from collective awakening.
Yeah.
Like as more and more individuals tap into that deeper level of awareness, compassion, wisdom, it creates a ripple effect, right? And that can influence the whole.
So it's like a critical mass kind of thing. Once enough people reach a certain level of awareness, it shifts the consciousness of humanity.
That's the idea.
Right.
And while that might sound like a very utopian vision, there's actually a growing body of research that suggests our collective consciousness does have an impact on the world.
Really?
Yeah. For example, there have been studies that have shown that large-scale meditations can actually decrease crime rates and promote peace in conflict zones.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So while individual transformation is really important, it's not just about personal growth, it's about contributing to a larger shift.
Exactly. And that's what makes this journey so meaningful, right? It's not just about improving our own lives. It's about participating in the evolution of humanity.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, I'm feeling inspired. I want to be a part of that collective awakening. What's one practical thing they can do right now to start cultivating that deeper connection and that sense of interconnectedness?
One simple but really powerful practice is to just cultivate present moment awareness. Take a few minutes each day to just sit quietly, observe your breath, your body, your thoughts, your emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Just notice them without judgment, without trying to change anything.
Right.
That simple act of paying attention can help to create some space between you and that constant mental chatter and allow you to tap into a deeper level of peace and awareness.
It's like hitting that pause button on autopilot. That's what we were talking about earlier. Only this time it's not about changing direction. It's just about being present with what is.
Exactly. And from that place of presence, you can start to notice the interconnectedness we've been talking about. You might start to feel a deeper connection with nature, with the people around you, even with the, seemingly mundane aspects of your daily life.
That's beautiful. Like awakening to the sacredness of the ordinary. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that for some people, this whole concept of spiritual awakening might sound a bit
True. Woohoo.
Woo-woo.
Holistic.
Interesting. And it is important to approach this topic with a healthy dose of discernment.
Right.
Not everything labeled spiritual is necessarily beneficial.
Yeah. So how can someone tell if they're on the right track? Like, what are some red flags to watch out for?
One red flag would be any teaching that encourages you to bypass your own inner authority or to suppress your emotions.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not about joining some elite club. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and humility, like an openness to the mystery of life.
Beautifully said. It's about recognizing that we're all on a journey, and there's always more to learn.
Okay, so we've talked about the stages, we've talked about the practices, but I think there's still this big question. Why does any of this matter? What's the point of all this striving for awakening?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And ultimately, the answer is a very personal one. It depends on your values, your aspirations. But the source suggests that awakening isn't just about personal fulfillment. It's about tapping into a deeper level of love, wisdom, and compassion. And that can ripple out into the world and create positive change on a collective level.
So as we individually awaken, we contribute to the awakening of humanity as a whole.
Precisely. And this is where it gets exciting. Imagine a world where more people were operating from that place of interconnectedness, of understanding, of compassion. How might we approach things like social justice, environmental sustainability, global conflict differently?
I'm getting chills. But let's be real, that's a pretty ambitious vision.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to bridge the gap between our current reality and this more, like, awakened future?
Well, it starts with each of us doing our own inner work, committing to our own growth and transformation. It's about embodying these principles, the love, the compassion, the wisdom in our everyday lives, in our interactions, in the choices we make.
So the change we want to see in the world, it starts with the change we cultivate within ourselves.
Exactly. And as more and more individuals embark on this journey of awakening, we create a collective momentum, a ripple effect that can have a profound impact.
That's a beautiful thought. Like, even if we can't see the full scope of that transformation, we can trust that every step we take towards awakening is a step towards a brighter future for everyone.
Exactly. And that's what makes this journey so worthwhile. It's not just about reaching some distant goal. It's about embodying those qualities of awakening in every moment. It's about living a life that's aligned with your deepest values, your truest self.
All right, so we've covered a lot today. We explored the stages, the practices, the potential impact. What a deep dive.
It has been. But before we wrap things up completely, I want to leave you with one final thought. What if this journey of awakening isn't about becoming someone better or more spiritual? What if it's about remembering who we truly are?
Oh, I like that. It's like peeling back the layers, all those layers of conditioning,
Right.
to reveal the essence that's always been within us. Yeah, that idea of like remembering who we truly are. It's pretty powerful. And it makes me think about something else the Source talked about that really stuck with me. Like, even at those highest stages of awakening, there's still room for like humor and creativity. It's not like you reach enlightenment and suddenly you're this serious, stoic being with no sense of fun.
Right. It makes you think of that quote, I think it was Hafiz, who said, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." And I feel like awakening in a lot of ways is about that. It's about reclaiming that sense of playfulness, the delight in the world.
I love that.
And that includes embracing all of those like uniquely human qualities, like humor, creativity.
So it's not about transcending our humanity. It's about expressing it more fully, more authentically.
Exactly. And the Source even suggests that like as we awaken, we actually become more capable of experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions.
Right.
Joy, sorrow, laughter, even anger. But we relate to them differently. We're not swept away by them, defined by them.
Can you give like an example of what that would look like?
Sure. Imagine someone at a high level of awakening. They might still experience moments of frustration, sadness, whatever, but they don't get caught up in those emotions. They can observe them, they feel them fully, but they don't let them control them.
So it's like developing a kind of emotional resilience, an ability to navigate all the ups and downs of life without losing yourself.
Yes. And the Source suggests that resilience comes from understanding impermanence, recognizing that all things, emotions included, are constantly changing. So you don't cling to the pleasant experiences or try to resist the unpleasant ones. You just let them be, let them arise and pass away.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine that would free up a lot of energy. Creativity, too. If you're not always battling your emotions, trying to control them, you have more space to just engage with life, right?
Totally. And that's what I find so inspiring about this whole journey. It's not about becoming this like perfect, idealized version of yourself. It's about embracing all of it, the messiness, the beauty, and expressing your gifts in a way that aligns with your values.
This has been so great. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore. And remember, we were just looking at one source for this deep dive. There are tons of other perspectives and teachings and practices out there.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final question to think about. If you could embody even a fraction of the qualities we talked about today, the peace, the joy, the connection, how might that change your life, your relationships, your impact on the world?
It's a beautiful question. And remember, this whole journey isn't about striving to become something you're not. It's about remembering who you truly are, that radiant being that's been there all along.
What a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us, everyone, for this deep dive into the stages of spiritual awakening. And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. Trust your intuition, follow your curiosity, and enjoy the journey.